The average analysis takes anywhere from 4 to 40 hours to complete. And now with AI, that work can be done in minutes. But the issue was never about speed. It was always about quality. The majority of your data team's work should have never been done in the first place, because there was never a real business decision that needed to be made. It was just curiosity. And your team never took the time to ask the right questions to see what the objective was in the first place. Most analysts are working in reactive mode. A request comes in, they say yes, and the work begins. Most of us default to an action plan. What do I need to build? How fast can I build it? And do I have everything I need to get started now? But they skip the most important step: knowing what they're actually committing to. Without getting that right, you end up building the wrong thing and then having to rebuild it again and wasting a ton of time and resources. So the way this typically looks is a stakeholder comes and asks for a dashboard, for example. The analyst immediately says yes, builds the dashboard, to which they deliver to the stakeholder. And the stakeholder says, these numbers aren't exactly what I was looking for. Can you add these additional metrics? Analyst goes, adds those additional metrics, to which the stakeholder says, not quite. And this goes on a loop, building and rebuilding and wasting a ton of effort when really the analyst should have asked questions upfront to understand what was needed. This loop is the single biggest time waste, and it's completely avoidable if you just have a proper discovery. So the very first conversation needs to be not about the plan, but about curiosity, understanding what the objective is to achieve. If anything, the default should be no, to ask yourself, is this even worth doing? Or is there something that already exists? Is there something I even need to commit to? This is what separates a task taker from a business partner, someone who is trusted in the business. And a business partner is aligned to the outcomes, the impact they drive, not just the tasks being checked off, the outputs that they build. That's exactly what AI is replacing, not the human core values that we add to the business. So let's first cover the types of requests you might be receiving. The first is the notorious quick question, which we all know by now is never quick. A quick request to just pull a number for me or point me in the right direction, or can we hop on a quick call? I want to quickly discuss an idea with you. The kind of request we'd rather have is, I'm working towards this outcome and I want to get your thoughts on what we can build together. But every single one of these requests needs to be evaluated before you commit to anything. And that is where a discovery conversation comes in. Discovery is the process of understanding the objectives before you commit to working on anything. So the very first question you need to ask is, what is the goal that you have in mind? This will expose the person who's just curious right away. Some people come to you because they maybe think there's a trend that's worth investigating, but they don't have an actual decision they plan to make. They just want to see and validate if the hypothesis is true, but they haven't thought through what that would actually mean. By asking this question, you're making them do that thinking. Are they actually planning to take any decisions on the back of it? Or are they just validating if they're right or wrong? That's not worth spending any resources on. Another way to validate this is to ask if they have a meeting coming up. And if so, who's in that meeting? These are all ways to understand the impact of the potential work you might be committing to. This tells you why they're coming to you in the first place, which shapes the amount of effort that might be worth putting into the impact. Building on that last question, you always want to ask, what is the timeline and why? This timeline tells you if there's any urgency. But remember, urgency does not equate to importance. Signals for urgency are hard timelines that they have in the calendar or meetings that are coming up, where impact are things such as the seniority of the decision makers that are in that room, in that meeting room, the amount of revenue that is on the line, if it's a retention, potential churn client, or an upsell potential. So I want to introduce you now to the impact versus effort prioritization matrix. I use this as a fail-safe for everything I work on. The matrix is a 2x2 matrix with impact on the vertical axis and effort on the horizontal axis. We want to always be working on the high impact side of this axis. If the work is low effort, those are the quick wins that we want to prioritize immediately. If the effort is high effort, we want to see if we can reduce the effort while maintaining the same impact. That's the objective in a discovery conversation, is to see what the potential impact is, and if we can design a different solution that's lower effort while achieving the same outcome. For anything that's higher effort, these are our big bets, the big projects that we would want to segment into weeks across the quarter, for example, but they're high impact projects, so we might still carve out time to do these. It's important to take on maybe 2 or 3 at most per quarter of these big bet projects. Now, the area to look out for is low impact. These are exactly the types of things that are time wasters and that we should be avoiding. The kinds of requests that are high effort but low impact are the time wasters. We need to kill these immediately. And the requests that are low effort but also low impact, these are the fill-ins. These are the types of tasks that we would only do if we have the time to buy some goodwill with our stakeholders, as an example. But don't be afraid to also default to no for these as well. Now, the art to a good discovery helps you place this request on this matrix. You can understand by asking the right questions what the potential impact would be and what the desired effort would be. Remember, you do not need to accept the request as it's given, especially if the level of effort is way too high for the potential impact. You are the expert in designing these tools to match the impact. So if you know certain data is difficult to retrieve, don't be afraid to recommend an alternative. Recommend something that would achieve the same impact, but with a lower level of effort. An example of how to reduce effort would be a request such as this one, where the business requests all of the refund data to segment customers by the type of refund request. Now, as an analyst, you might know that refund data consists of different buckets: vouchers, cash, credit cards, and this data is dispersed all over the business in different data pockets. But you also know that 80% of that data is in vouchers. So while the business had requested all of the refund data, you know that by pulling just the voucher data, you can get the right trend for much less effort. In this case, it absolutely makes sense to go back to the business and say, I hear your request. I have an alternative that should give us the desired outcome, but it's much easier for me to pull, and I can do this in 2 days instead of a few weeks, which it might take to pull all of the refund data. Now the business has more information to be able to make their decision. Do they really need all of the refund data, or potentially your recommendation is a better one? Now, I also hear from some people that they're way too busy to take a call and ask these questions. They'd rather just get the work done and move on. But my reframe is you can't afford to not have this call. Skipping these calls is exactly what's making you so busy. Every time you skip actually asking the questions to understand what you're building, you take on additional risk of building the wrong thing, which is the biggest waste of time. And by asking for a call to discuss, some requests filter themselves out. Now, the other thing I hear is people don't want to seem difficult. They think it's just easy to start working on it and not have to hop on a call and negotiate. But the reality is that the business actually wants to give you the context. They want you to understand the full problem, and they don't want to have the burden of having to try to come up with the best solution themselves. Another example of this is in my previous role, a salesperson came up to me and asked for some support with an account they were working on. They asked for the same report I had done for a previous client. And I responded asking for a quick conversation to discuss this client's situation. On that call, they revealed new insights, new things that client was challenged with, and I actually proposed something I had built for another salesperson, something they had never seen before. It was amazing how their whole face lit up with excitement, something new and exciting they get to present to their client. And of course they agreed, and it was much easier for me to then build that new solution. These conversations don't at all come off as being difficult. They come off as being a partner, somebody who shares the challenge with them, and it earns you so much trust in your role. And this trust earns you so much in the long term, because you'll see how the business stops coming to you with tasks to do and starts pulling you into those meetings where the decisions are made and where you can ask those questions upfront. Those are the meetings where you gain visibility and true impact in your role. So the goal is not to have a long list of tasks, but rather to have a few high impact projects and few partners you're working with in your business. If you found this video useful, give it a like. And if you have any questions, make sure to leave those in the comments. I respond to every single one personally. And if you're a data leader who wants to learn more about how I support analysts run a proper discovery conversation, check out the link in the description below.